Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we are thankfully back to just one Model Y owner on today's show. And
There
only
can't
one
be-
Model 3 owner.
Only one. Not more than two. Not more than two. Not more than one. We killed Randy
How are
off
you?
again. I'm good. After throwing Randy so far, he landed on another continent. I'm alright. You know, dealing with all...
He's actually went to Europe, I think, so he could get the Quicksilver Model Y. Wasn't that the one he preferred, or was it Midnight Cherry? I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but I think we're both in agreement that we would both get Quicksilver if we went to Europe and bought a Model Y.
Okay. If it was you and me that wanted Quicksilver, then he wanted Midnight Cherry, just
Probably
to be
then.
contrarian.
Sure.
That would be totally Randy's move.
Why not? I mean, Ultra Red is... Oh, not Ultra Red. Crimson Red? I already forgot the name of it. It's
Oh, Midnight
Cherry Red?
I think.
Yeah. That's a pretty good color, but... I don't know. It seems a little bit too dark/purple for me. I think
I'm with you.
the silver is just that much more, not shiny, but
I like the lighter tones.
it's got that pizzazz.
Probably better for thermals.
Yeah. And also seeing all of like the Model 3s on the road here in the Bay that were in that group that got the silver paint color before they discontinued it.
Oh, I love those.
Amazing.
They always look so good. Speaking of cars we saw on the road, for the first time yesterday, I was at like dinner with my sister and brother-in-law, and we looked out. I looked out the window, and I saw this really, really weird taillight design. It was kind of, some might call it pixelated, and I was like, what the heck is that? And then I saw it start moving, and I thought, wow, the Magic Mouse, it's on wheels. So I was just like, I'll be right back. So I literally got up from the table and ran outside so that I could record that quick video of it. And I saw the Ioniq 6 for the first time. And I thought it looks great. I don't understand the hate surrounding it personally. I love the look.
I think people just don't like that shape. I mean, people made fun of the VW Bug, in which I was probably part of that group too. But at least with the Ioniq 6, it's got to focus on it. Well, it has a hand in its design with the Ioniq 5 with those pixels and all that. But it also focuses on aero and range, which and is a sedan, which is something that I'm in full support of because we need more sedans in the EV space because we were getting, I think at least one EV crossover SUV every month, it seems like.
Yeah, you're right. It does feel like that, huh? It's like we could have that could be a highlight of the podcast. This week's crossover. Here's another one. Wow. The Chevy Blazer.
Oh dear Lord, not again. Yeah, I saw another VinFast on the road, which it was the
interesting.
It was the biggest one. I think it was the V70 or whatever they call them. They've got like I think a 40, a 60. No, is that Volvo? I'm not too sure. But basically, it was the biggest one.
I saw they got a recall this morning, software update.
Well, hopefully the engineers can do their best to address this recall. By taking it into the service center. Well, I guess some cars have to do that. Like, I think a lot of the ID4s have to go into the service center and
that's right.
Get a physical software update. I don't know. But yeah, I saw VinFast, and then I saw another Lyric, like I mentioned, I think, in last week's or the week before's podcast.
Saw another one. Okay.
But instead of being black, this one was white. So I got to see more of the contours and all that, which was nice.
I've not seen that. I don't even know if I've seen that in the internet form. What does a white Lyric look like?
It looks beautiful. I'm still not really a fan of that extended back, though. It seems kind of...
Really?
I don't know. It feels like it's trying to be both a wagon and a crossover, which some cars can do it, other cars can't, and I don't think the Lyric nails it on the exterior design for me. I'd have to go on the interior to see if it does something. I mean, I've driven...
I kind of like that extended back, but it does look different. That's for sure.
Different, putting it nicely.
I like I don't know. I'm used to the hatchbacks always just off the back. You know, they just are so drastically cut. That looks a little more aero friendly
Hmm.
to me. But I don't know what it is. I've never seen the white lyric before, but I'm looking at it now and I really like it. I'm like, that looks nice.
It's a
But
it's a nice color. But and then I saw, I think right after that, there was a like acid yellow or neon green uh
acid yellow.
GV60 Genesis. I was just like, who
Oh,
decided on that color? But okay.
that's not the type of person who would buy the GV60. I would not imagine wanting it in that vibrant of a color.
Right.
Seems like more of a classy, elegant, you know, design scheme. That's bizarre. I'm trying to visualize that and I can't do it. Ugh,
Yeah, who knows?
weird.
Um
Well, they got to make a lot more lyrics now that the bolts are going to be shut down here soon.
I
What do
mentioned
you
that
think?
to my
It,
wife that they're killing the Bolt manufacturing line, and then I think they're replacing it with the Silverado EV and the Blazer, if I'm correct, if I discern that
yeah, I
correctly from
think
the news.
definitely. I heard it was just the trucks. I don't
Oh,
know about the Blazer, but that confuses me more because I'm like, what is shared between the Bolt and the Silverado and the
probably not
Sierra?
much, but they might be able to use a lot of those same machines for doors and
Okay.
wheels, some other components, but at least like a lot of the big body stuff, they're going to need to introduce some bigger machinery to just handle it.
Yeah.
But anyways, like they're tearing down the line to build up a new one, which
Mm-hmm.
allots them that versus like trying to be like Tesla where you're trying to fit in another line for like Model Y or something like that right next to Model 3. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have space or it's either
Tent.
tearing it down and bringing it back up or trying to nudge everything over to make room. And I think that nudging over just is too tough in a manufacturing environment or assembly environment in general.
Yeah.
Where at least for GM, they're going with the right idea that if they really want to prioritize with the Silverado EV, which they should, um, it makes sense for them just to tear down the Bolt line, especially if it's costing them a whole bunch of money just to produce them and sell them at a loss. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know if we I don't think we did highlight this because this news broke I think right after the podcast last week, but
Oh.
the Silverado got a increase in range according to
Yeah.
GM from like 400 to 450. Except before I think they said
Right.
400 plus, and now they're
Yeah.
saying it's around 450, which
Right.
excites me, but also makes me
Yeah.
question what is under the body of that truck. Like what kind of what size is the battery there? Uh,
Yeah. I imagine it must be pretty huge. It's probably my guess is it's using the same battery pack as the Hummer, just
wow.
more optimized and obviously it's more aerodynamic, I think.
Hmm.
Hummer's like opposite of aerodynamic.
Oh yeah.
So what this says a lot about, in my opinion, is not so much how great the Silverado is. It says more just about how terrible the Hummer is. The battery pack is probably big enough to be put in like a decent sized truck with a big frunk and a big bed and a big cabin.
Hmm.
And you could push a big truck like that 450 miles, but you put that same battery pack in a Hummer and it goes 330 miles.
Decreases it
That's
almost
my
100.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what if you had a prediction for the kilowatt hours
I
per
don't really
se,
have a
but that's a lot of
prediction.
range.
I'm more interested in how they'll all stack up together. Like once we have a very nice lineup of electric trucks being produced, or at least theoretically produced with whatever battery packs that
Hmm.
they're being packaged with, because it'll serve as
Yeah.
a nice comparison for what these companies can do in terms of efficiency. Where like we look at
Right.
Rivian and they're not the most efficient because the weight of their truck is insane. Of
Yes.
course, like we mentioned before, the Hummer is astounding in how inefficient it is. And then,
It's kind of impressive, honestly, how
yeah,
bad
the F one
I've been
fifty.
watching the teardown. I don't know if you caught it, but Monroe's been breaking up the Hummer battery pack and
Oh no!
explaining all the steel welds and everything. And they're just like, this is how not to do it. Like, they were not thinking about this at all. It's
No,
hilarious.
they wanted to get it out as soon as they could, but they're only
Hmm.
making two a month apparently. But hopefully their next earnings shows a little bit more than two. Uh,
There's like one guy building all the armors.
he's sweating, welding,
Yeah.
actually moving all the panels. Not even the robots are helping. He's having to pick up all
Yeah.
these door panels.
That would be impressive if one guy could build two a month.
I'd give that guy
That's
a
a pretty.
raise and a half. But yeah, being able to compare the Rivian, the Hummer, the F-150 Lightning, and then now that we know kind of what the Ram has, and then comparing that
Hmm.
to whatever the Cybertruck will have and whatever the Silverado is going to have, will just serve as a
Yeah,
nice way to figure out, okay, of course, probably Tesla's going to be on efficiency because of their design on both aero
probably.
and in pack, or just battery
Hmm.
design. But
Yeah.
being able to just stack those up and see, like, okay, how do these compare to one another? Not just in acceleration, because of course there's going to be those videos on acceleration, but
Right.
what they can accomplish towing or just in truck specs, right? Towing and
Yeah.
hauling, daily driving, ease of parking, features for self-driving and all that, or even just like features in general for like daily living,
Hmm.
for like park spot, or was it parking alerts and all that, blind spots and a
Right.
bunch of other
Yeah.
things. That'll be nice
Will
because,
Cybertruck have park assist?
oh
I
dear
guess
lord,
it'll have the vision based kind that
if it'll ever work,
doesn't really work. Yeah.
who
No, but
knows.
the specs are definitely what I think most people are interested in for trucks because they use them for getting stuff done a lot more. But
They'll serve as a nice
yeah,
lineup for the
it's
first generation of electric trucks and how they
yeah.
compare to current day F-150s, basically as the golden standard for internal combustion engine trucks that do a lot of these things easily without any problem. And then
Hmm.
to compare those and think about what the next generation looks like, where Tesla's incrementing every day, um, and all these other companies are going to be incrementing maybe every 6 months or every year or whatever with new designs and new additions and all that. Uh,
Hmm.
just to see what they evolve into is something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think GM's got a lot on their hands, or at least a lot of plans they got to execute on. But I was thinking of how the Silverado. It's kind of a bummer that the 450-mile range variant is just for fleet buyers,
Hmm.
which is like it's sort of like what Ford did with the Lightning. They were like, "Here's the most popular trim, but you can only buy that for fleet." Probably because the margins are not very good.
Sure.
On the what is it? It's like the Lightning Pro, but with extended range battery or something. It's
Yep.
like the cheap long range one. You have to buy them in bulk, and I remember people on Reddit trying to plan their old like, can we put in a fleet order and then all of us will buy them, like do a family.
I think you
plan,
could,
basically.
honestly. You could probably. Randy knows more about creating your own business and all that, and all the legalities and
Yeah, yeah,
specifics around it, but you could probably do that and then promise people, because once you get an approval from Ford that, yeah, you can buy X amount or whatever, then you get all
uh huh.
those deposits from all the other people on Reddit or whatever, and then
Yes,
take delivery. Uh, and then you just basically have to temporarily call these people your employees so that way they can drive them.
yeah,
Except I don't know what the legal loopholes are around that, because Ford might start a lawsuit against you for skirting around some red tape
right.
just so that way you
I
can
remember
get something
Ford having some paperwork or something. I think that was like if certain people who bought the Lightning couldn't resell it within a certain time period,
for a
they
year,
were
I
like,
believe.
yeah, for the first year you can't resell this, which is like, ugh, this is kind of sketchy. But I was trying to look up the differences between the Chevy Blazer and the Chevy Equinox because there's
Hmm.
an EV version of both they've unveiled,
Hmm.
and I'm struggling to see what. I think the Blazer's a bit more luxury focused.
Yeah. It's also a little bit larger, I believe, compared to the Equinox. Not by much,
Okay.
but I think
So
that's,
in your mind is the Equinox kind of replacing the Bolt?
yes. And the Blazer is
Okay.
basically going to be the EUV replacement with more
Ah,
space and maybe a little bit more luxury features, like you mentioned before.
okay. That makes more sense because I'm looking at the two and that's like one is red and one is blue, but that's all I can really tell apart.
Right. Yeah, I haven't really paid
Yeah.
attention to either, just because, like we said before,
They
there's
haven't said much.
well,
Yeah.
they haven't said much per se, but then also like they there's a crossover SUV, what seems like released every single month. That's an EV, and it's just they all blend together at one point, and it loses my interest unless you're touting some very different design or
Yeah.
a crazy
Agreed.
range number. Uh,
Yeah.
those will
You need
be
something super unique that helps it stand out because you're right. There's so many EVs that are having this exact same mindset of just sporty SUV with okay range and some buttons and still a display though for some things, and everyone just has this middle of the ground safe way to design an SUV. And it's like, all right, there's going to be freaking 500 of these things within the next couple of years, so you better have some iconic or standout feature that attracts you to it, and those don't do it for me. But
mhm.
as far as luxury goes, which is an interesting spectrum of rating. I'm curious of your thoughts on the leaked Cybertruck interior updates we've seen
Right.
with the new capacitive buttons and the display and the software and the UI and the like the vault style center console
Hmm.
garage door thing. Like, does that interest you more or worry you?
I am a big fan of the Octa wheel. That
Oh
thing is
yeah.
hilarious. It does have 8 sides. I counted it, kind of basically.
Oh, it
Basically,
does.
it's got a flat top, flat bottom, kind of flat sides, and then it's kind of got
Okay.
some uh, connecting angled lines
Yeah,
to it
you're
on the
right.
side. So
Yeah, I'm
it's
looking at it. It is kind of eight sided.
it's basically an Octa wheel, and that thing is pretty cool. I like that, even though it does what so it appeases me in regards to because I think about how's this going to deal with when I tow horses and all that, and
Yeah.
it definitely accomplishes the fact that I don't have to look at the wheel per se. I will always land on something that isn't the center rotating portion of it, but
Yeah, yeah,
a
like the
arm on it.
airbag section.
Yeah, or a button or
Hmm.
something like that. There's no way I can accidentally hit a button. I'm always going to be hitting the rim of the wheel. Unless I guess you're
True.
trying to grab right on the side where there's some of those buttons. Um, I like
And I
the.
just noticed there's only two connections, unlike the Model S and X steering wheel slash yoke.
It's
They have,
basically like the original Model 3 wheel, then, right? Because I think that only had two.
yeah, the prototype one. You
Two
just
was
the
not
center
stems, but
is have two little stems connecting to the
spokes.
outside part.
Spokes. That's what they're called.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spokes. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I like the wheel design. The capacitive buttons I'm a little bit iffy on. It's kind of weird that they have like a phone call button, or that's what it looks like.
I
Um,
think that's what it is. I can't really
I'd rather
tell
that
exactly,
be
but it's not a
like,
horn button.
yeah, I'd rather that be, I don't know, because it probably doesn't make sense to have like a vault opening button on the steering wheel per se. It makes more sense to be on the screen so that way you don't
Mm.
accidentally open the vault while you're driving and then whatever you had in
Yeah,
there
that's a
now
good point.
flies away.
Yeah, or close it when there's something in it.
Right. Yeah. Kung, 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 kung. Though
Yeah.
that probably brings up a good point that it likely will have something like the model. Well, I guess I think it's built into all the Teslas now. If you
Hmm.
try closing either the tail or not the tailgate, the hatch or the trunk and all
Yeah.
that, and it's on the automatic. I think yours is automatic, right? Or no, you have to physically close
Yeah.
it, don't you? Well, either or.
No,
Um,
mine's powered.
Okay, cool. Basically, if you put your hand in there, your body in there, and you hit the button to close it, it will stop. It'll try close, and it'll be like, there's something in the way and stop. The vault probably
Right.
works the same way. So I don't think
Yeah.
there's necessarily that issue of it just either trying to close and like putting so much stress
Yeah.
on it that it's just like, ah, and just starts vibrating
Right.
versus
Yeah.
it'll probably just tap and be like, oh, nope, can't, and then back up, and you'll be like, what the heck? Um,
Right.
it'll probably actually act more like the windows on the Teslas, where
Oh yeah.
you'll try to roll it
True.
up, and then randomly it doesn't want to roll up for some reason. It might think that there's something there. It'll just be like, my vault isn't closing when I tell it to close.
Right. That's a fine tuning balance you have to figure out. Like I want it to be strong enough that if there's some like debris or something caught in there, the window can just push through it, but not strong enough that it hurts your fingers if you get your hand in there or something.
I am interested in how
But
that mechanism is engineered with like
mhm.
debris in mind, maybe getting caught on the top of that tonneau cover, and then it basically being conveyor belted into the mechanism that rolls it up in the Cybertruck.
Right, yeah.
If there's probably some debris vents to let it out underneath the truck, or something
Mm,
else, because I can envision if you don't have any way for materials to, or I guess foreign objects to exit that area,
true.
that you're just gonna have a nice gravel pit hiding somewhere in your Cybertruck.
You could put little gems in there and it'll sand them out. It'll make them all soft because
It's
it's
a
just
rock
constantly.
polisher.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope that they've thought a lot about it after all the issues Rivian had with it, and they seem to just now be rolling out a solution. And then
Mm.
Ford basically just was like, "No, that's okay. You can use a third-party cover or whatever." My personal prediction, which I'm not happy about, is just that they have put no thought into it at all. I'm guessing it's just everyone's going to get their trucks, and those covers are going to immediately get jammed up with gravel and dirt, and their service centers are going to be flooded with taking apart. Because that's in a really buried part of the truck, too, where that cover rolls into. I don't think that's going to be super easy to access, especially with the exoskeleton and everything.
Hmm.
And structural battery pack. Like, I think I'm predicting it will be a major design issue that people have with it.
Hopefully not. I do hope that they have
I hope not.
some exit vent, or port
Yeah.
for debris to fly out and all that, or just I don't know, but I would think that engineers would think about that just because that is their main cause of failure is debris getting in there.
Hmm.
Otherwise, everything else seems pretty trivial, like it running into some tall object, like if you're hauling a table and it runs into the legs or something like that, it'll
Yeah.
probably be programmed to back up and be rolled up again, rather than
Yeah.
just stress itself against it. So I think they've thought about it, but it might be the same line of thinking that Rivian went through and had to go through those growing pains of they thought about it,
Hmm.
they thought that their design would work, and it didn't. The masses were like,
Yeah.
nope, there's gravel over it, it doesn't want to open.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, all right, let's rethink this, and figured out, okay, let's just release a manual one that has leafs, so that
Hmm.
way there's no way things can get caught in it, uh, and destroy a mechanism. And then the
Hmm.
automatic one, they probably installed. I don't know. I haven't taken a look at the new redesign for the new automatic vault for the R1T, but I would think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
maybe got some brush or filter system to basically whisk off any debris
Yes.
like gravel or dirt or anything like that. Or, like we've mentioned before, it has some exit port down
Yeah.
in the truck that
That sounds
allows,
more and more important.
yeah. But otherwise, going back into the interior of this nice little look at the inside of the Cybertruck, which these employees are definitely risking their jobs every single time that they do this.
He's got
Which,
to burn his shoes. He's got the orange laces and everything.
oh, they already
It's
know
a
who he is at this point, probably because they probably know everyone that walked around that Cybertruck during that day because they've got security cameras, I'm sure, around Giga Texas, so
That's true.
they know
In the
everyone.
truck.
Well, not even well, maybe in the truck, but like around the building as well. And if not,
Yeah.
there is probably security evidence of this guy going in and out of the building,
And
and
he's
they could
got a
probably,
badge on.
they've got badge. You know that he's got these orange laces on his shoes. They know who this guy is at this point. Uh,
Poor
but
guy.
yeah, I'm not a fan. Again, kind of a bummer that the sixth seat is probably it most probably definitely not going to make it. As
Yeah.
evident with the new redesign of this center console. It does look like to me though that on the front of it, because you mentioned the garage door style
Yeah.
cover that looks like there's some lip there where you can insert your phone between the garage door closer and the front lip of the center
Mm-hmm.
console. So I think there's a place where you can
Yeah.
put your phone in. It's sitting straight up, um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know whether that's actually like a Qi charger or anything like that, or even if it is a charger in
I
general.
assume it would be. I'm sure there will be a place for the phone. I just think it's probably not as good of a place
Yeah,
compared to.
what would you do then? Because like uh,
Right.
one idea is like you can't do the Nissan Aria approach where you've got like some mechanism that basically brings a compartment from under the
Yeah.
center console or the center dashboard, and then that's
Yeah.
how you charge your phone. But then like the idea is, oh, well, if someone presses the button and then it retracts it, now your phone is stuck inside the truck. Unless I guess it's a way to protect your phone if you want to leave your phone with your truck for some reason, which probably not a good idea if you're gonna lock it and run
Yeah.
away.
Don't. If it's your phone key too.
Right,
So.
exactly. So that way, that is one approach is to have like some stand that slides in or slides out or anything like that from underneath the screen. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
or you basically just use the center console, which I believe is what Tesla is going to be doing. Um,
Yeah.
I think it'll probably operate like the Model S and Model X with their new ways of like it basically like the closing mechanism or the lid being able to close at
Mm-hmm.
different locations. I think you'll be able to do that.
Right.
Or maybe it doesn't even have like that springy feel where it's always trying to push it forward. Maybe you could just
Mm-hmm.
like a garage well, kind of like a garage door. Basically be able to put it in whatever position you want because it seems like it could just be a manual mechanism, kind of like a manual tonneau cover without leaves, but all connected. You could basically just slide it to whatever position you want and leave it there. Um, Maybe
Yeah.
that's what they expect people to do because then you'll have like your phone chargers in the front, maybe one cup holder right next to that, and then you can slide out further to get a second cup holder. And then what it looks like is right behind that is a separate compartment for whatever you want to put in there. Uh, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me, I put a whole bunch of was it a garage door opener, some pens, and all that. So it's got storage. It's just not my
Oh yeah.
it's just not my favorite configuration of storage because you can basically do the same thing with a seat underneath, but it just doesn't seem
Yeah.
like Tesla wants to do that.
It would be dual functional in that case.
Right.
But yeah, I my best guess is it really just comes down to a safety thing. I can't imagine it being that expensive.
Probably not. I don't think it's a expensive add-on for regular
It's just
internal
like a
combustion engine.
hinge, right?
Well, I think was it on that previous one it had like a headrest, but even with my
Yeah.
Ram, it doesn't have a headrest on the middle seat. It's
Mm.
just kind of like a seat for your back and your butt, and then it doesn't even
Yeah.
have a strap that goes from like behind your back and then to kind of like your hip. It just has
Uh
a
huh.
waist seat belt. So
Oh, I see.
I think was on one of the I'd have to look at the concept images of the Cybertruck interior, but
Mm-hmm.
they could have toyed with the idea of having the shoulder strap one like you have in all cars of the Teslas, um, or the waist strap one, and they realized that it doesn't even matter because if there is a sudden stop or collision, that person's face is going
Yeah.
straight into the screen, and there's going to be a lot of lawsuits of Tesla needs to put some safety measure there, and then
Yeah.
Tesla's response is probably going to be, okay, we just get rid of the seat then, because I don't know if there's an easy way to put an airbag there without putting it basically above the screen so it deploys long or lengthwise down to basically your feet. So that way you fall
Mm-hmm.
into almost what is like a punching bag. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you risk damaging, I guess, the screen. But I guess at that point, if you're going into a front end collision, uh,
Yeah.
the truck might be totaled per se because
Right.
it may not take that much force, or you don't even know what's crashing into. So
Well, it's just a much bigger display than you'd have in most vehicles, and
sure.
because it's Tesla, there's not a great workaround for that. They can't. Well, let's not use as massive of a display. No, that's kind of everything. So they could do. I remember you talking about how the airbag in ram kind of stretches out from the passenger side, so it like extends out to try to reach the middle, but
By not that
that
much.
likely adds yeah, it's probably not super helpful in the first place, and it adds more cost, and Tesla's more about how do we make it safe and cost effective, and this is probably the safest way to what's the safest way to have a sixth passenger? Don't have a sixth passenger. Like
Which is a
the
bummer.
best sixth seat is no sixth seat.
I guess
That's
they'd
their
probably say if
mindset.
you want six
But
seats, just get the Model X or something like that, or a seven-seater Model Y or something like that. But
yeah,
uh,
if you want Final Cut, buy a Mac is their
oh dear lord,
logic. But yeah, I think Tesla. They mentioned at what was it, Investor Day, how they have all this like crowd data on the usages of their vehicle and what people do with them. I think it was it Martin Vieck? I forget the guy's name, but he was at Autonomy Day too,
hmm
and he explained how they had a lot of data showing in the early days that no one uses the sunroof on the old Model S's. So they were like, that's easy. Remove that because no one uses it. They probably have a lot of concrete data showing how many people on average sit in these vehicles.
hmm
And the number of times the six-seater Model X has six people in it, or the seven-seater Model Y has six or seven people in it. They probably see that data, like what percentage of our audience are we ticking off? My guess is it's not very high, because everything NHTSA has reported in regards to like average number of passengers in each vehicle on the road, it's still under two, technically. Like the total average is like 1.6, 1.8 or something, which is why I'm more defendant of vehicles like Aptera, because I'm like, yeah, I know there's times where we need more, but a
hmm
lot of the time you don't. And that's probably Tesla's mindset with the Cybertruck is like five people is, I mean, the best selling vehicles in the road sit five, like Model
right,
Y. And before that, I think it's the Camry or the
the Corolla,
Corolla.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like most popular vehicles are not six, seven.
No,
So
even
it'd
the
be
most
nice if they
popular,
were.
the F-150, usually has five seats. It usually doesn't have that
Oh,
six seat.
really?
Yeah, because their
I thought they
new
all had that.
alt no, so their newest
Huh.
feature, I think last year that they introduced or the year before that, is the fold down gear shifter, and then the center
Oh, that's
console
right. Yep,
armrest folds
you're
forward, and
right.
now you have a work surface.
That's
So
right. I remember watching that on the Lightning.
yeah, you
Yeah, I
either
didn't think about that. That's a good point.
so you either get that six seat, which you can't really do much with, or you
Mm-hmm.
get this center console, which you can do a decent amount with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the opinion that I like that six seat just in case, because I've used that six seat many
Oh,
times on
sure.
road trips or taking all of my friends or a lot of my friends
Yeah.
in one vehicle. We don't have to take a separate vehicle anywhere. We could just take the big truck that has six seats and go wherever. And we don't have to worry
Mm-hmm.
about finding parking for everyone. We just have to find parking for the one big truck. Uh, and that's been nice. Yeah, it's not the most comfortable seat, but it's convenient for those times. But they don't happen as often, so it's that whole, is it worth it or not? Does it make sense or not? Yesn't in many cases. Uh,
If you're Tesla, you're gonna lean towards. Well, if we can't decide, let's go with the cheaper option.
yeah, well, I usually my brain is more of the American mindset of I'd rather have it and not use it
Yeah.
than not have it and need it. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's the typical truck buyer in the first place,
yeah,
right? It's like you're not using the bed every time,
right.
but when you need it, it's there. That's why you buy a truck. So I understand the frustration. I get it, but um, does a lot of people from what I've seen on Twitter and in the YouTube comments are not overly positive towards the leak? Like a lot of people, a lot of the notion is that it feels cheaper, and some are saying if the interior looks like this, that must mean it's got to be affordable. This can't be a high priced truck. Do you have that same reaction to it? Like this has to be Model 3 Y pricing, or at
Oh
least
no.
ballpark.
No, not well. Model 3, Model Y, when they were at their lowest supply, yes, um,
Yeah.
and highest demand. But
Okay.
no,
It's in the high 60, 70,000
yeah, this is
range.
well, I think starts at high 60 or 70, maybe,
Uh-huh.
maybe even yeah, with the dual motor or whatever, and then the quad motor or tri motor, whatever they come out with, starts around 90,000, 99,000, or something like that, and goes up from there.
Yeah.
uh, just looking at the competition, because we assume like, oh, Ford will be able to undercut, or any other company will be able to undercut what Tesla does, and they'll just take the
Mm-hmm.
loss. And you look at like a Lariat or even an XLT F-150 Lightning, that starts
Yeah.
around about 60 to 70, well, yeah, 60 to $80,000 if you want the
Yep.
extended range of
Right.
325 miles. So
Mm-hmm.
if they're undercutting Tesla, because they typically do, um, then you have to add on an extra like $10,000 probably just to be safe, because well, 5 to 10,000 probably, and you'll get
Mm-hmm.
around something around $80 or $90,000, or 80 to $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
as a maybe not base price, but at least a battery that gets you over 300 miles. So
Yeah. At least for the launch edition or whatever,
yeah, and this is the launch
at
edition
the
too.
start.
So you have to think about, all right, there's going to be so much demand, so Tesla's gonna be able to price this at whatever price they want, because they know anyone will pay whatever they can to get those cars, or at least that truck, because it's one of a
Yeah.
kind, unique. And it's just gonna. I don't think. I think we will see an affordable Cybertruck in like, I don't know, 7 years probably,
Okay.
unless someone
But
totally
it's been
destroys.
around for a while.
Well, it's been around for a
Yeah.
while, because that's kind of what's happened with threes and Ys, right? It's been so long that the
Yeah.
three's been produced that we're finally seeing some that even not well, even new, but even not new, around $20,000 or $30,000, which isn't bad. Uh, and they're
Yeah.
like in fair condition, so
Mm-hmm.
it only makes sense that if you want an affordable Cybertruck, you're gonna have to wait a while.
Yeah.
Otherwise, get your hands on maybe the Wolverine, made in Mexico one that we theorize about. Uh, that one may come at
You
a.
said that wouldn't come here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Try to get your hands on it somehow, because
Oh, okay.
I'm still
Move to
supporting.
Mexico.
We'll move to Mexico, or have a buddy in Mexico order one, and then ship it over to the other side of the U.S. and then get some permit for it or whatever. Because I think you could drive. Yeah, you can drive some Citroens that they sell in Mexico in America. You just,
Mm,
I think there's some laws around it, but
that'd probably be really popular if they did something like that. I bet a bunch of people would do it.
right. So yeah, I don't think this thing's going to be cheap. I think what they're doing right now is trying to go with an interior that will last a long time and won't have that many issues. Along with that, just easy to produce in general,
Yes.
right? They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
go too crazy with it. It's already crazy enough being a Polygon. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And the air suspension, and the rear wheel steering, and the vault, and the 1,000 volt architecture, and the new 48 volt. Like, there's so much complexity. I can understand completely why, when it came to the interior, they were like, "Yeah, let's just keep it simple. Let's not go crazy."
right, and if you want it to last a very long time, it doesn't make sense to make it so uh not necessarily luxury focused, but at least adding a whole bunch of stuff that will not age well. So
Mm,
stuff like in, I think, was it the BMW i7, the one with the giant
yeah.
screen for the rear passengers and all that. I could easily
Yeah.
see that mechanism having issues, or even bring it back to Tesla with the Model X and its Falcon Wing doors. In 10 years, those things are going to have issues, or at least
Mm,
I would think they will. We have to probably look at the ones that were sold,
the first ones.
yeah, the first ones,
Yeah.
see how they're faring today, how many times they've been to the service
True.
center to fix issues. Because I know, at least from my personal experience, wearing can happen between a moving part and a stationary part, like the hatch. Um,
Right.
and doing that over time, it does shift just a tiny bit. It's not always perfect. It doesn't always close perfect. It doesn't always open perfect.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a little bit of wiggle room, and it might find a new settling point, which then starts rubbing against the body or the glass or anything like that. Uh,
Yep.
so that's probably why with this they're like, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to have this 6 seat. It doesn't need to have all these doodads that make it do a whole bunch of stuff. Just the bare basics that we want to accomplish, like the tonneau cover and now this new center console cover and all that. It doesn't have to be
Right.
crazy. It just has to do its job and do it good for X amount of cycles, which is probably in the hundreds of thousands. So
Yeah.
I don't doubt that this
How
is
is the cycle life on the garage door?
that's what a
You
lot
know,
of people measure,
iron
right?
based.
Well,
Hmm.
there is cycle life in many of those things. Like people look at cycle life for structural members, whether it's fasteners or anything like that.
Yeah.
That is also probably done with this. I mean, they've done it with the motors and the batteries for these Tesla
Hmm.
parts. Like you talk about like this motor or that they showed at the Model Y event. They had the spinning up of that one motor with like the brake system and all that, and they said that that's
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
running for a very long time back in that day. I wonder if that model
Uh
is
huh.
still going or that test is still going. Uh,
It's still running.
if it's still running, I'd be impressed to see whatever number it has at this point in terms of
Mm.
how many cycles it went or how many miles it technically went. Uh, but of course, it doesn't have a wheel attached usually. So, but even still, what I'm trying to get at is that they're probably going as simple as possible with this interior that they can, which is good because if it's going to be used as a truck, you want to keep it simple. You don't want to have a whole bunch of doodads that can easily get broken, bumped into, get
True.
dirty, have a bunch of issues with it.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be crazy. I mean, use the F-150 as a nice template. It doesn't have that much. Yeah, the gear shifter goes into the it goes flush with the center console, and then you've got
Right.
like a flippable armrest. But like that's just a
Hmm.
hinge and another hinge, right? They're just two hinges, and they're very
Yeah.
simple hinges. They're not that complex, in my opinion, from at least my
Hmm.
engineering standpoint that has just looked at them uh,
Hmm.
and experienced it, I guess. But even still,
Hmm.
they're not that complex. Where like you start involving like an automatic opening and closing vault cover for the center console, that's when things start getting a little bit more complicated because you got a motor that is having to deal with that, uh, and a bunch of other things. So you want to keep some sanctity of simplicity, so that way
Yes,
repairability is
for
easy,
sure.
but then also continuity of, or I guess the not continuity, but I guess uh the
Consistency?
capacity. Basically, the part's
Mm.
ability, its endurance. Basically, the part's endurance needs to be high.
Mm.
So
That's fair.
I think that's what they're aiming at right now, especially with that center console. Is how do we make this stylish and unique, but at the same time durable? So
Yeah.
I didn't really take offense to this new interiors center console as much per se. Uh,
Hmm.
it's it's kind of just like, yep, confirms my suspicions that they're definitely not going with the 6 seat, and this is just what their newest
Yeah.
iteration looks like. It may look like this once production happens. It may change. We might not have that. We might have something a little bit
True.
different, something a little bit more like the SRX with kind of like a
Hopefully, the wire dangling underneath it is put back by the time it's in production.
yeah, or maybe that's a brake controller or something like that. But I think that's probably
There you
built
go.
in. But anyways,
I would love if you were putting stuff under there on the subject of wires. I'd love an HDMI port
oh yeah, to
in
use
a
that big screen for
110
whatever you want.
with that big pass through. Yeah, if you could just load that up with whatever you see. I have a PS5 console in my car, just like a Model S or X. You just have to buy it separately, but
That's a
it's
good question. Do you
$500.
think that this vehicle will have Steam or not? Because the 3 and Y don't, but the S and
Ooh,
X
that is
do.
a good question. Um, I'm gonna say yes,
Okay.
but it's a hesitant yes. My prediction is that I don't. For one, what all that you mentioned just now about all the actuating things and trying to keep it simple makes me think the Cybertruck probably won't have the tilting screen like the SRX.
Interesting.
They'll probably just leave it fixed for cost measures. But when I got into it on Twitter with someone a few weeks ago about, I was arguing recently or a few weeks back about how I think the Model 3 and Y should get ventilated seats, cooled seats, because it's like a pretty standard thing for vehicles of that price, and I think a lot of people want them and appreciate them. And if Tesla's trying to increase demand, I think that would be an easy way to do it. But I understand people still want the S and X to be more luxurious, so I was suggesting S and X should get the massaging seats that other car brands flaunt about. I would say it's not something that people look at as much as a standard thing. It's very luxurious, but that's what the S and X are all about. And then the 3 and Y, I would argue cooled seats are arguably more important, and they help with efficiency,
Right.
cooling you directly.
Well, Tesla even
So it
says
feels a bit more.
use your heated seat versus the HVAC to heat
Yes.
yourself to maintain
Right.
your range, which
Yes.
only makes sense. Okay, then what if it's hot outside? Do you want me to use the HVAC or do you want me to use the cooled seat that you guys have installed in these cars?
Yeah, right. So I think it's a bit more functional and also just feature parity with other vehicles available today. I think ID4, I believe, had cooled seats, which was pretty cheap anyway. But I was arguing with someone about that, and they were arguing that the Model S and X need those AMD GPUs that are able to run Steam and everything because of the extra display space, essentially. Like, it has the driver display and the FSD visualizations, and on top of that, you've got a much bigger 17-inch center display, and with more windows. Like, the UI is different. Like, you can move them around, navigation and music, and everything's showing simultaneously. And he was arguing for, like, hardware 4 and everything. And we believe we've seen interior shots of the Cybertruck that show a display for the backseat passengers, and we can see some new cameras, like a front bumper camera, and there's likely to also be, I don't know if this is confirmed yet or not, but there's likely to be a bumper camera, but also like a high-mounted camera to replicate the rear view screen.
Sure.
Like where the mirror would be. So because I think the Cybertruck might be a little bit more camera intensive and have a little bit more display stuff than a typical Model 3 or Y, that if that guy is right, I don't know if he's right, maybe having a dedicated GPU like that is more beneficial when you're expecting the car to do more.
Sure.
And the Steam beta, or the Steam access, the game library, is just kind of a nice perk of happening to include that GPU. It's
Sure.
like, well, it costs a little bit more, but it's helpful for all those cameras and screens. And also, yeah, you can play some games. And I think Elon would be the kind of guy to say, you can play Cyberpunk on your Cybertruck. That's so brilliant. Wow, I'm playing game. So it's not purely for the games, is my guess. There's some other reasons to include it.
Sure.
But the games would be a cool side effect. That's my prediction. But
I think that's some sound
yours?
logic. I think you've actually convinced me. At first I was going to say no, but it makes sense with what you argued, or I guess presented with, being the fact that it probably needs that computation power for a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah,
That makes sense. My only thing that I noticed as well in this leaked image is that it's using more of like a Model 3 or Model Y
yes.
not orientation, but layout for things on the screen. So It's
Right.
got the car on the left, and it's got the maps on the right, where with like a Model S with all their promotional images, they usually have like the media control stuff, like apps or games
Yeah.
or whatever on the left, and then the navigation on the right, but the navigation on the right's like tiny, while the other stuff is
Yeah.
big with music and all that.
Well, because they have the driver display, so they can offload a lot of that car information behind the yoke
Right,
wheel.
but the Cybertruck doesn't, so it does make sense
Yeah.
to have that there. But
It's a weird
it's the,
hybrid approach now.
that's the strange thing about the Cybertruck is it's having to operate between the two, between the
Yeah.
S and X and the 3 and Y, where it's got more of like
Uh-huh.
the 3 and Y things, in my opinion, with the luxury of probably the computer, but also the size of the screen.
It's bigger screen, and you've got to have the auto shift functionality. You have to change directions on the screen.
We know that now
So
because
that
they haven't
code-
really shown a wheel that has steering stocks, so it makes, or steering
Yes.
stocks, turning stocks, or any type of stocks in general.
gears. Yeah,
Gear stocks, thanks. So yeah, it does make sense for it to have that. So it definitely, I definitely believe Elon with that. I think that tweet they made a while ago, that, or maybe even what he said at the event, is that Cybertruck will kind of have its own unique interface, which makes sense because it doesn't have the heads up display or whatever like a S or X, but
Yeah,
it's
probably not.
not as constrained as the 3 and Y in terms of cost of whatever its components it's got inside, or it has the excuse to use a higher CPU or GPU or anything like that. So
Right.
it will be unique.
I'm more curious about like. So Gregor Truck just tagged me while we were talking about this, which I thought was funny. I'm like, oh, that's relevant. He has a prediction about the that other capacitive button that we can't really make out the detail of that kind of looks like a phone. His prediction is that is a side view camera feed. So when you push it, it shows up the blind spot cameras on the display because Elon keeps pushing the whole. We'll make the mirrors easy to take off. Anybody can remove the mirrors. You just have to take delivery with them. And I was expressing in my recap of it, like, my only issue with that is there's not like a constant feed on the interior unless you just pull up the camera tab, but then that kind of covers up your navigation. So do you think that would be a decent solution if someone did want to drop the mirrors, would be to just hit a button on the steering, the octa-steer. What did you call it?
The octa wheel.
Octa wheel, thank you. Hit a button on the octa wheel, and then you can see your camera feeds. But I guess that's kind of what the blinker does.
Well, it doesn't have. So yeah,
sometimes you don't want the blinker active.
Sometimes you don't, and I think what's nice is Tesla allows for this programmable button to exist with the scroll wheel and all that. So I think there could be a nice logical use case where for that left steering wheel button type of thing, you use that as a press-in for the camera views to come up if you don't want to have your side view mirrors, or even if you do have your side view mirrors and you still want that extra view from the side view cameras, you can just press in that button on the left side, which is right next to the turn signals. But it's still kind of in your mind like, oh, on the left side of the steering wheel, you've got left turn, right turn, headlights, but then also a button to trigger the cameras. Where on the right side of the wheel, you've got maybe that that icon, which looking at it again, it still looks like an old phone icon to me. I would say old phone.
Yeah.
Dates me kind of, but at the same time, I also grew up in that time.
It is an old phone.
But basically, that could probably just be. Well, there's also a mic button, so there's a mic button for voice control, but there's also a call button, which just confuses me more. But then on the other side, it's got the windshield wiper fluid and windshield wipers, and then also the autopilot
wiper.
I guess it is, right? There's only one wiper.
Yeah, you can't say.
Well, I guess there is multiple blades.
Anymore.
There's 2 blades. It's just one.
Oh, there is.
There's 2 blades on it. Yeah, that's not one giant blade. Oh. It's just.
I thought it was.
Well, where would you buy the one blade, right?
Tesla, I imagine. You know?
I would disagree. I think they would.
A lot of this vehicle is probably not going to work with existing accessories. I imagine.
Maybe, but I would argue that at least like to maintain some cost effectiveness and not put all the strain on Tesla to make 1 billion wiper blades, that they would lean on. Okay, we can use kind of like these Costco brand windshield wiper blades.
Yeah.
Where we just put one. I'd have to look at the wiper blade again, but I'm pretty sure it's.
I'm looking at it now. I'm trying to. I'd just be worried that there'd be like a little line in between the two that it misses.
So here's something with my car, Drew, is it doesn't clean the bottom of the windshield. My car doesn't clean the bottom of the windshield. I've got a crap ton of bugs on the bottom of the windshield. I don't know whether it's just because of my design as an early VIN Model Y or anything like that, or maybe the bugs are just that tough to get caked, or they're too caked on to get wiped off. I haven't been able to wash my car in a while. I've been busy. But basically, what am I trying to get at? Oh, the windshield wipers on the Model Y, yes, they have the built-in fluid dispenser basically midway up the blade.
Yeah.
But that only sprays at mid and higher on the windshield when you're windshield wiping, where the bottom of it doesn't really get cleaned unless you're not moving. If you're not moving, then you're just
Okay.
spraying water all over your car while it's not moving, in which that's why I usually do it while
Mm-hmm.
it's moving, so that way it kind of streaks off and doesn't get stuck. But even so, like, mine doesn't even clean the bottom of the windshield. I wouldn't put it past Tesla to overlook this and be like, yeah, we've got two windshield wiper blades on this one giant mechanism for windshield wiping, but and it does leave a line, but you can still see above and below this line without an issue. Like, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's necessarily that much of like a barrier of entry or just like a barrier for design per se, because
Okay.
already mine has an issue in that same realm where I can't see basically at level with the hood or
Uh-huh.
anything below that. I have to look a little
Okay.
bit higher, but also it could just be the fact that my bugs are caked on and I can't get them off easily, or maybe my windshield wiper fluid
Sure.
nozzle isn't aligned correctly, or maybe I've done something else. Who knows? But I wouldn't put it past them to have two blades on there and be like, it's all right. Or maybe they could be offset a little bit as well. We don't know.
Mm.
Um, we I'd have to look
Yeah,
at
I
an
want to. I need to find
image.
that video. There's a video of it in action somewhere, but tell us in the comments, listeners, is it one blade or is it two blades? I
Well,
want to
here
know.
you can. It looks like to me it's two. Just
Huh.
from looking at. Let me link it right here.
Okay.
Basically, it looks like there's two right there.
Oh yeah, that's a good. That's a good shot of it.
So
Huh.
at least to me,
Okay.
it makes more sense both from a parts standpoint of like no Joe Schmo is gonna be like, I want to buy windshield wiper blades, but no one sells them. I can't replace them. And then someone's like, dummy, you can order them on the Tesla website, and they're like, well, why is that a thing? I don't like. That seems like an
You got
oversight
to use
on.
your Tesla credits. You use your referral credits on your Cyber Wiper.
Oh, dear Lord. I just think from a logical standpoint, it doesn't make sense to put all the strain on your own company to produce these very unique giant wiper blades that will easily warp because
mm,
you can even, I guess you could put more standoffs on it for like mounting points, but if it's just a typical wiper blade where it only inserts and basically is held at kind of like one cohesive area, the ends are going to
hmm
just warp everywhere, and you're just going to have like this weird squirrely wiper blade on the ends where the center might get most of it, but the ends look weird. I would think they would want to avoid that and kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
increase the rigidity of the wiper blade by using two wiper blades that you can buy at Costco or whatever gas station and
hmm
easily install them without an issue. And which I've done with my Model Y. I use like Costco wiper blades, which thankfully they come with like different attachments that can go on a unique uh, mounting mechanism for a wiper blade, like what Tesla has,
Right.
or even for like what a Volvo has and all that. They everyone uses kind of a somewhat different but somewhat similar wiper blade mounting system, and thankfully there's some standard. And there's usually like they usually
Yeah.
operate around two or three standards like NACS and
hmm
CCS and all that. But anyways, I think there is two wiper blades. If not,
Okay.
I will humbly stand corrected, and I'll just be
I
that
think you're
much
right.
more angrier that there's only
At
one
least on
giant
that
wiper blade.
prototype. Yeah.
Yeah.
That I can definitely see too. But I'm just realizing, looking at it now, the windshield of the Cybertruck is going to be very hard to clean. It's
Yeah.
very large and very slanted. So, like, to get to the middle, how do you like lift up that wiper? Like on a normal car, you can pull them back.
It will
That
be
thing's
like
going
a
to be like,
sail.
yeah, you have this giant blade to fold up and then wipe around, and then like the roof portion. I guess you can lower the suspension a lot, but yeah, like the roof portion is going to be really high up there
I don't think
to
it'll be
try
that
to
bad. I mean,
reach.
I've washed my truck, right? And it's not like a big issue of
hmm
like you have to try to get to the top of the truck and clean off the roof and all that. Like it's not an
Uh,
issue, and even that doesn't have air suspension. So like I have to deal with whatever
mm,
suspension I have as standard in my Ram, which isn't the highest suspension. But like even so, like you don't see people with lifted trucks also be like, oh no, it's too tall. Like people have
yeah,
ladders, they have step ladders, they can easily get on top of there. But yeah, it is a daunting surface, which will be nice for like things
It's
streaking
huge.
off. It won't like really collect anywhere. I guess maybe underneath that
Mm,
the front hood and all that, it might collect there because that's usually, at least in my Y, where there's a channel for fluids to kind of exit out
right. Yeah,
underneath the car. It might have that
probably.
too hidden. We don't know.
They
We'd
didn't
have
do that right on the original Model 3 trunks. Do you remember that?
well in the trunk, yeah, it would
The
all go in
the trunk would
because
open and all the water just pours inside.
that's a similar
We
issue
were
with other
washing my
cars
car.
too.
Yeah, we were washing my car last week, and I was grateful that they fixed that because it was all wet and everything. And then I opened the trunk, and it all just stays out of the way. I'm like, see, that's great engineering. That's a good design. That makes more sense.
Well, it's a lot of things that you just don't think about in the moment when you're engineering
Yeah,
or just designing a car. Like you're more
yeah,
focused on a lot of the mechanisms that are like how will the door open and close? How will this
right.
window actuate up and
Yeah.
down, or how the side view mirrors will actuate if we want them to actuate or not? Are we allowing for
Hmm.
different sized ones as well? Which I hope that Tesla does because I think was it Ford does with their F-150 Lightning, or I guess their F-150, where you can get different side view mirrors. I hope Tesla allows for that too, with different side view
I
mirrors.
assume you'd at least keep the ones it comes with, but potentially you would put on bigger ones.
Either, yeah, it could be either an accessory or you can order it from the factory with that, but Tesla doesn't really do that usually. They're just like, here's basically the car, but now it's in whatever color you want. And it's either the dual motor or tri motor or whatever you want. They don't usually do like, oh, it actually also has this. Well, I guess they kind of do with the tow hitch, but
Hmm.
maybe that
Well, I
does. I don't
think
know.
that people need to be more aware because Elon tends to just go on Twitter and say anybody can remove the mirrors. I believe it depends on your state.
Sure.
Because I remember reading this research project some guy did because he was like, well, if you can remove them, I want to remove them. So he made a model. He took the mirrors off his Model 3 and put in this little flat black section to cover them up. But in that project, if you probably just Google removing side view mirrors from Model 3, he details how, depending on your state, like one mirror is required, but the other one isn't. And
Hmm.
in some states, you can remove both, but I think there's some states where you can't remove any. But I'm afraid that Elon is just kind of pushing that narrative of just, oh yeah, just rip them off. And it could depend on where you live. So please check in. But I mean, what he's probably saying is that a cop probably won't pull you over um, purely because you're missing those mirrors. Like in California, you're supposed to have a front and rear license plate, but half the people driving where I live don't have them. But the cops
Right.
don't really care. But if you get pulled over, they might bring that up if you get pulled over for something else. But I doubt they'd pull you over just because, excuse me, sir, your Cybertruck is missing its mirrors. But they might be like, you're supposed to have that. You know, if you get on the cops' bad side, I guess they might look at things to little micro felonies to tack on to the ticket.
They'll probably more than likely just look at your vehicle and be like, you can't drive a custom prototype without tags or anything like that. Like
You're not allowed to drive a door wedge, sir.
basically there's some YouTube short that I saw the other day where people were driving a Rivian out in the snow or whatever on some mountain pass. The cop basically pulled them over saying you can't drive a prototype on these roads, and they're like, it's a Rivian. It's a new electric truck. It's also got its temp
Yeah,
tag on the back like any other motor vehicle. Are we good to go? And the
right.
cop's like, yeah, I guess so. But it's just like some
I
people just don't
remember
know.
seeing that with a Model 3. There was a guy that got pulled over, and the
With the
cops.
center screen.
Yeah, he thought he had mounted his iPad in the car or something.
Right. So
And
you just
he
don't
thought he
know.
was joking. He was
Yeah,
like,
right.
oh, no, that's it. That's the car. Like, that's how I see everything. And he's like,
I can't remove it. It comes like that. I love that video. It's a classic video. But
yeah, that's a good
I'm
one.
pretty sure that'll just happen for a while because even if like you do all this marketing or like
Hmm.
even if Tesla is that well known, there's still going to be some cops out there who don't know about the Cybertruck or don't know about anything else
Hmm.
surrounding it because like even some dude in I forget where that YouTube short took place with the Rivian issue. I don't even know where that took place, but like
Hmm.
that guy didn't even know that the Rivian was like
Yeah, yeah.
a regular car that you could buy. In fact, you can
Yeah.
get it in less than 14 days in some places, like in California, which is pretty cool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at least was it, yeah, with the Cybertruck, they're just gonna be like, you can't drive your pet project on the road, and you'll be like, this is a Tesla, and they'll be like, oh, this stupid Tesla. Just then they'll go on their own rant, and you'll be like, can I
write
go?
you a ticket for buying a Tesla. You know,
Right.
the grid is powered by coal anyway, so it's not actually. Yeah.
I'm gonna write you an emissions ticket.
I remember that project. He said without the mirrors, he got like 5% better efficiency, or 5 or 10%. It wasn't nothing. It was like a decent amount of range boost. But what I envision is probably going to happen. It's going to create a lot of bull chow when the Cybertruck comes out, because for legal reasons, I bet with the EPA test, they'll have to do it with the mirrors on.
Sure.
And then we'll get the range number, and it'll be somewhat disappointing. It'll be like
400,
330.
well, yeah, 310
But-
miles and all that. You're like, wow.
But then you'll have all the hyperbulls say, well, if you remove the mirrors, it adds another 50 miles of range. They're gonna say, well, you can't trust the EPA range figure because most people will take the mirrors off, and if you take the mirrors off, it's actually 360 mile, or actually it's 400-mile range when you take the mirror. I know people in my comments that behave that way. I've seen it already on Twitter today. They said, oh, don't worry about the Cybertruck Octa wheel, because
But I am worried about the Cybertruck.
don't worry about it, Mike, because it'll be full self-driving by then. They're going to
Okay.
have that all solved. You won't need to drive the car. That I literally got comments about that, and I was like, I I don't even want to dive into FSD. Yeah, that was me. People are like, you won't drive the car anyway. Don't worry about it.
I just like the idea that, like, it's the same argument. You kind of skirted on that idea. Is like, people are like, well, it has FSD, but it can't do this, can't really do that too well, can't really do that too well, and all that. It'll be the same story for, like, these side view mirrors. It'll be like, well, yeah, its EPA range, or EPA rated range is 310, but if you take the mirrors off, then it actually goes like 360 miles, and then you can actually do a lot more with that. But it's just like, the normal common day person's just gonna be like, what?
Right.
Oh,
Remember, kids, if your range is too low, just take a Franz-style sledgehammer to the mirror. Just rip them off.
I would probably be curious enough in which I might take order of the Cybertruck. My wife would always leave the mirrors on because she likes having the mirrors for even just.
I figured you would, just for towing
Yeah,
alone, I think.
but
that's
I would
really
like the
useful.
idea of, like, if I'm commuting with the truck that day, how easy would the mirrors be to take off? Like, let's just say it's in the morning.
Oh,
I've
I
got
see.
maybe
Put
2
them back
minutes
on.
to take off mirrors before heading out to work and all that. How easy is it
Yeah.
to take off the mirrors to go to work, just to be like, haha, I got more range today, and also this is kind of fun driving without mirrors and all that. Except then I get
Would you
pulled
be
over.
comfortable with the on-screen approach, or would you not? Like, would you rather there be a always-on feed of the blind spot cameras, or would you rather just rely on the blinker occasionally?
So this
popping
is
up?
something that is kind of developing right now with me with the Y, where I've become
Yeah.
a little bit more okay with looking at the screen as my blind spot camera. And I sometimes do a tiny glance over my shoulder just to make sure that there's no one in that regime
Yeah.
between where the camera can't see and I can see. But
Mhm.
I've been trying to experiment with the idea of not using the side view mirrors because in the Model Y, they're pretty. Everything with a
That's
mirror in the
true.
Model Y is
They're
tiny,
kinda
and you
small.
can't see much anyways with
Yeah,
the
that's a good
rear
point.
view and the side view. But I've become a little bit more accustomed to use the screen in the Model Y as that nice little, when I turn on the blinker to change lanes, to be able to see what's there. So I think I would be a little bit more comfortable with the Cybertruck, even if you don't trigger the cameras by pressing the button, but by it either being on all the
Signaling.
time, or even if it's just a turn signal thing. Either way, I think I might be able to grow accustomed to it just based off
Okay.
of my experience right now with the Y. But that remains to be seen because the Cybertruck is
Yeah.
a truck versus a
Yeah.
crossover SUV. So it's bigger. Where in the Ram, I rely on my big mirrors on the side to make sure I'm not hitting a tiny little Model 3 on the road and all that.
Right. I wish there was a way you could rearrange, because when you pull up the camera feed at highway speed, most of the angle is the backup camera,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is kind of redundant when I have a decent rear view mirror up here, but those those repeater cameras on the side, I wish they could fill up more of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I probably wouldn't do it while my car's in warranty, but like long term, that's when I'd feel more comfortable doing modifications to my car. Like when my extended warranty and everything has expired, that's when I'd probably feel more comfortable messing around with it, with whether that be like tow hitch or yoke or removing the mirrors. Be like, hey, it's all free game now. Like I'm not ruining anything by modifying it, but at least right now, I probably wouldn't want to mess around with it. But also, over time, degradation, there will be a little bit more of it. So that's when you might care a bit more about better efficiency, aerodynamics, when your battery pack doesn't hold what it used to. So these are just projects I'm debating on in the future. But that's kind of the cool thing about the software, is they could improve it with time, or I guess it covers up your maps, but you could fall back on using your phone for navigation like the old days if you
Mm-hmm.
really needed a good method, which I think a lot of people might end up doing when standard connectivity expires. I'm curious how that's going to change. Like, oh, you don't have navigation built into the car anymore. Like, what does the UI do without navigation? It's like the whole thing,
Right.
the FSD visualization now. Like, it just occupies the whole screen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I have curiosity because you said put a tow hitch on your 3 whenever the extended warranty uh, goes out on it. I looked up. I don't know what your towing range is on, or not towing range, but your towing capacity with your 3 is.
Capacity. I'm sure it's not much.
Well, one site or whatever claims that it's like 1,000 kilograms for the Model 3, but it doesn't say which Model 3 and all that. But 1,000
Don't they
kilograms,
offer them in Europe?
they do. But I think you can still figure it out here in the United
Yeah,
States.
yeah.
It's still
The
probably listed
aftermarket way to do it.
somewhere, well, either aftermarket or even so. Like there probably is something in the manual that lists your towing capacity.
Uh huh.
But this source said 1,000 pounds, or sorry, 1,000 kilograms, which is about
Uh huh.
2,200 pounds, which is basically, I think, if I remember right, is what my car can tow with its rims, being the sport rims. So theoretically, I think your car can tow the same amount as mine, which just doesn't
Mm.
make me happy at all because
That makes me angry. I was gonna say it's probably not so much what the vehicle is rated for, but whatever hitch you buy probably has different
it depends.
ratings, because it's a aftermarket thing. It's not like a from Tesla accessory per
Uh,
se.
Not per se, because you have to factor in the structural, well, just what the truck or car or vehicle in general can tow,
Mm-hmm.
both by its own accord, just due to its structural dynamics and all that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So basically, it the 3 and Y aren't too different per se. Besides, of course, the Model Y having unibodies, or not unibodies, but
The casting
single
thing.
castings on the
Yeah.
front and rear now. So who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But at least, just thinking about it, the controlling factor with mine is the rims. The sport rims can't tow as much as the
Oh
Aero
yeah.
or the
That's right.
Gemini or the Uber
Right.
Turbine. So that's my controlling factors. I can't tow about 3,000 or 3,500 pounds like those rims because my sport rims bring it down just because of their capacity for propelling the car forward,
Is that a
or even
grip
just holding.
thing?
No, it's probably just in regards to how the rim is structurally, because it's built
Hmm.
for sportier driving because it's a sport rim. It's an uh,
Okay.
induction wheel or whatever. Where the Gemini has a lot bigger spokes and just
Mm-hmm.
has an aero cap on it, and then the Uber Turbine has a bigger leaf to its arrow pattern. So it also can carry much more because of just how structurally it's made up, I believe. That's my
I
theory.
wonder if my 18-inch arrows would be different then. How are those spokes in comparison?
Well, yeah, if they're like the Geminis or a little bit more like the induction. And who knows? I
Hmm.
think that this requires a little bit more digging into your manual or also just looking at different
Yeah.
sources for.
I probably wouldn't tow like a trailer. I'd probably do something more like a bike rack or
Right.
um, just to be able to easily throw bikes on the back and not the roof rack. I think would eat into your arrow a lot. I have a friend with a roof rack and it's a lot of work getting the bikes
Yeah.
on and off
I
the
always
road.
thought the roof rack would be cool on the Y, but then I look at it now, it's like I like having the range that I have, even though it is a
Hmm.
knockdown in range just from battery degradation and also
Sure.
just the rims as well, knocking down the range a bit more. But adding on a roof rack will just decrease that range a lot more because it's something
Hmm.
that you're stacking on top of the car and it's not making it a slipstream. Even if you don't have
Hmm.
anything there, it's still an object in that flow that wasn't there before. So you're
Right.
introducing a little bit more drag into the system just by the
And
presence of
probably
this
a lot
part.
harder to take off too.
I'd have to, yeah. That's what I kind of
I've
like
seen
about the
videos.
Rivians is like the Rivians are easy, just like push button, it comes out.
Right. That's
And
cool.
then,
I love
or
that.
just push it in and it's locked in. That's it. And
Yeah.
it's super, like, it can carry a tent with people in it without a problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing versus, like, maybe Tesla's approach or other cars' approach where, like, you have to do this whole installation process where it has to be, yeah, of course, at specific points like the Rivian has, but, like,
Hmm.
it's just not as easy to take off and put on, which is where the Rivian is
Right.
like, that's a nice feature. Like, even if I don't buy a crossbar for
Yeah.
loading things onto it, it's just nice to
Hmm.
have the idea whether you want to loop things into it or actually use a roof rack on it. It's there and ready. Kind of,
Yeah.
it ties back into my whole American mindset of I like having the ability to do that versus not having that ability and just like
Yeah.
sucking it up at the end of the day, which I do anyways. But even still,
Hmm.
it's kind of like, yeah, maybe I will at some point because who knows? Maybe in 5 to 10, could be a year, could be 5 years, could be 10 years. I still own whatever car. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I want to get into that sort of
Yeah.
niche
Yeah.
with that car of car camping, or not even
Hmm.
car camping, but camping on top of the car, or loading things onto the car in that
Mm.
manner and going places. Maybe I become a surfer later, and that's what I want, uh,
Yeah.
or something
That's how
else. Who
you'd
knows?
convince me to get a Cybertruck is that I'd look at it as a really efficient van life thanks to Cyberpotty, but we've gone down
So I guess
that road before.
that then maybe begs the question for me: would you be more interested in a cyber SUV than compared to the Cybertruck?
Mm,
If
it's an
they make
interesting
this cyber
question.
SUV because they have said that they want to build
Mm.
something on the Cybertruck platform that is like a van. I think that they have, if I recall correctly, from one of their myriad of presentations this year or last year, that they do want to do like
Someone
a
said
van type
that.
thing. Someone
It
did.
might have been the shareholder, but I know they definitely said they'd do a van at some point. I'm not sure if it was cyber inspired, but
It doesn't have to be. It could
I
just be on that
tend,
platform. But
yeah, I tend to be against SUVs if possible, just because I think there's so many of them.
I don't like your
Um,
sedan either, then, Drew.
I mean, I'm not even really a truck guy by any means, but I like. I guess what I appreciate the most about the Cybertruck's design is how functional yet aerodynamic it is.
Hmm.
And if there was an SUV variant, I imagine it would probably come at the cost of the aero. And that's what I like about the what's it called? The Cyberlander
Hmm.
concept is having expandable storage or living space, or in my dream scenario, bathing space. That would just be the bathroom out the back. But then that can collapse. And we even talked about, leaving the tailgate down to try to improve that teardrop shape as much as possible. I like that concept. SUV kind of kills your bed, usually. There's not too much bedroom afterwards. And then Um, it's also a lot harder to make some kind of space to stand up in because it's going to be filled with seats of some kind. I
Hmm.
guess it would be decent for laying down. Um, like crawl space would be better, but like standing space would basically be eliminated unless you just camp outside it. So I probably wouldn't care as much for a cyber SUV, but it's funny you bring that up because I've been thinking a lot about this over the past week. I was like, all the big, most popular vehicles right now, like the Kia EV9. I don't know if you saw some of the touring videos on that. Um, Side note, I found out from they had a EV9 at an auto show
Hmm.
that I was watching, and the swiveling second row seats, they can't do that in the U.S. That's
What?
a Europe only thing. So we're not getting that, unfortunately, which is a bit of a bummer. But even so, R1S is super popular. Rivian says they have way more orders for that than their truck, I believe. And the EV9, a lot of people have interest in because people are looking for three-row, full-size SUVs. But we also have all this crazy demand for pickup trucks. Everyone's talking about of course, the Cybertruck, the Silverado. This is most popular vehicle segment in the US. I just keep thinking to myself, there needs to be a way. I know this may sound complicated from an engineering standpoint. There needs to be a way to have a vehicle that could do both. And I feel like that's not being marketed to that much. Like, I don't see much engineering emphasis put towards it. Could be, not as simple as a module as like a bike rack that I can just with one pin connect and disconnect. But if there was some way to design a vehicle that could have a bed in the back, but then you can also bring in a third row and a roof, like a shell over the bed, and turn it into a three-row SUV, I feel like that vehicle would do pretty well, especially if it's all electric, of course. So maybe there's a way to do that with the Cybertruck. I feel like the roof line kind of kills a lot of the chance for it because of how the vault goes down.
Hmm.
But we've seen Tesla do crazy things like the seven-seater Model Y, which Mike and I both got to sit in, and we were like,
Right.
this is not how people should be able to fit, but we
People should not
technically
exist
fit
here.
back there. Yeah. And of course, we hear all these complaints about the six-seater Cybertruck not being a thing, and it compromised with five seats. So I'm not saying it needs to be the most luxurious or like premium experience, like R1S levels of high quality interior, but some kind of Cybertruck accessory that could convert it into a legal, with seatbelts and maybe airbags or whatever, some system that you could convert a pickup truck into a seven-seater SUV on just one platform. It just seems kind of silly to me that we have all these pickup truck lines and then we have to have whole separate assembly lines for three-row SUVs. It's like the R1T and R1S are so similar already. It would just be fascinating to me if they found a way to make one vehicle that could do both. And I don't see much effort put towards that. Maybe there is a vehicle I don't know about that's trying to do that, but
Hmm. Well,
I feel like we don't talk about that enough.
if you
Like a
go
modular
to,
approach.
was it the Central Valley in California, you'll find many of these trucks that have additional seats in the back. But these additional seats are usually an old couch that was from their house abode that got too much Cheerios or pet dander or whatever else on it, and
Yeah.
they thought this would be a great bed, couch, sorry, truck bed couch for while we're
Mm.
trucking around, then drinking beer in the
Mm-hmm.
cornfield. Those exist. They're not really the most OEM approach, but they do
Yeah, yeah.
exist.
That's
But
true. That's a good point.
the issue there, in my opinion, is just like you basically have to engineer a vehicle to be both. It's kind of like the whole hybrid approach to both, either a regular device like an iPad or something like that, um,
Yeah.
or anything
There's
else. Like,
compromises.
there's a lot of compromises you have to take, and having to deal with like, oh, there's now a compartment in the bed that opens up that allows you to take the wall that divides the second row occupants to the bed. You can fold
Yep.
that down underneath the bed, so then you're kind of compromising on what the bed can do because it has to be a separate compartment for this midgate to go down. And then from there also have
Mm.
mounting points around there, so that way you can put a
Yeah.
seat on it and then also allow so that these second row seats can scoot forward to get people in the back, and then also you have to put on like a camper shell type thing. It becomes very complicated, and like there are probably
Yeah.
custom builds that accommodate for that, but it at this point it just makes more sense to go with like was it a VW bus approach where it's already built, or just an SUV in general. It's already built to
Hmm.
be an SUV, but if you really want to dirty up the interior, you open up the back and you shove in a hay bale, or you put whatever, and it goes over the third row seats and sometimes the second row seats and all that. And there you go.
Uh-huh.
You have a truck, but now it's got a roof that you kind of are restricted to the height of whatever object you're putting in
Mm.
and whatever. I think it's kind of hard to engineer around trying to make an all-in-one truck SUV type of thing while being
Yeah.
cost effective. So I think that's why we
Yeah.
just haven't seen it. It would be cool. I would be very interested in that, but at the same
I'm
time,
trying to visualize it in a way that would be intuitive. Like, yeah, the midgate's probably the hardest part, but what I was visualizing is kind of picture a Cybertruck design because it's
yep.
fairly aero. But instead of the roll up tonneau cover, it's a flat, solid tonneau cover that you can lift up
Hmm.
to increase the headroom. And then in the floor of the bed, you have the backs of the seats and they can fold up. So
Yeah, I think the issue with that
when the
is that
third
it
rows
does.
fold flat, it's like a bed, but then it comes up and it's extra seating.
The only design flaw with that is that the tonneau cover doesn't come from the uh, pinnacle, or basically the very top of the Cybertruck. It comes from a little bit below, so you're gonna have like
Right, yeah, you'd
a
have to tweak it
slant up,
for sure.
a small slant down, and then it's like a stair step where it's like a small ramp
Yeah.
down and
I
then
know that's how the
flat.
Cybertruck's designed. I'm saying
Yeah,
this is the dream Tailosive
the
pickup
Tailosive Cyber
UV,
UV.
whatever. I would have it mounted in a different place, and I'd
Sure.
cover it in solar, obviously.
Oh, of
But
course.
then you'd need a something on the back too. You'd need, maybe you could build in an extension in the tailgate so that when the tailgate stays up, there's like an extra door, kind of like
They
how the
already do.
Cybertruck has the
That's the
ramp.
ramp. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
bring the ramp up.
So that could be used as a ramp, or it could be lifted up and attached to the now lifted tonneau cover portion. See, this podcast, whenever it's just me and Mike, we just discover we need to make our own EV company. We're going to take $100 deposits. We're going to go public.
Okay, I'll do all the engineering and the clay models and all the design and all the analysis and everything. You can do the
The
marketing and the business,
the
and we'll just call it
PUV.
the PUV. What is the
PU.
oh pickup the pickup utility vehicle?
I hate the term SUV. It makes no sense. Sport utility vehicle. What does that even mean? It has utility
I think that's
because
the
it's
funny
a
thing
hatch.
also with like recent SUVs or whatever, or what we
Hmm.
call crossovers, is it's now a crossover utility vehicle. It's like, what does a crossover mean? It's like all these acronyms and everything.
Yeah.
Like you get into the weeds of like, is it actually? It's just like it's a term that we call it. Like that's an SUV, and like you already know from growing up with your parents calling it SUV. It's like, okay, I understand an
Yeah.
SUV is some large vehicle, usually boxy, and usually carries a bunch of people in it. Sometimes they don't, but they have a decent amount of storage in it. Like that's
Yeah.
usually the consensus when you say the term SUV. So
Yes.
it's just
And I'm
yeah.
picturing like the sides, obviously, because if you lifted that tonneau cover to be level,
Hmm.
when you lift it up for the head space, you'd have the gap along the bed. So it'd be open air there. So you'd have to build in, kind of like these instant crate things we have that fold up.
Hmm.
You'd have to have little pieces that unfold into position, which could help the integrity, but they go flat when you fold it down. It would be very engineering wise tricky. I understand why probably no one has done it yet, but I can picture it in my head and it's beautiful.
You
I need
reminded
to.
me of the was it the Rivian in Africa? That's a safari truck and all that.
Oh yeah, yeah, where they rip the roof off.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
love that thing.
It's
That's
like
cool.
a hybrid between like a golf cart and an
Yeah,
electric vehicle. It makes me laugh, but it looks really neat. It'd be
and it
kind of like
sits
that
eight
on the
people.
end. Yeah. And look, it's got the seats in the back like you wanted, but it's an R1T and not an R1S. Like, there you go. It's possible. It's just you need to heavily
Yeah, they did
modify
it.
it. So,
Wait, is that an R1S they modified? It must
uh,
be because there's no gear tunnel.
no, that's an R1T. It's got the gear tunnel hatch right there. They're just using that as a step, I believe.
Where's it? I thought the gear tunnel doesn't go up that high
I would have
on
to
the
look at the
side.
gear tunnel on the R1T, but I believe that's an
Maybe they
R1T
modified that piece.
just
Huh.
because I don't think it'd be hard to get an R1S out there at the time that they had it
Yeah, that's
because
a
I
good
think
point.
R1Ss were just being made. And you'd basically have to have Rivian partner up with whatever Safari service.
Yeah.
This was the Maasai Wilderness Conservation Trust and all that. So like it's great
Yeah.
marketing and all that, but like it's a one-off custom thing.
Well, all I'll say is that if Tesla can fit two seats in the back of the Model Y, I think there's a way for a third party to make some kind of third row in the Cybertruck bed. Um, the only issue is that vault. If you push that, it just goes right into the passenger's face. It's very maybe they should do what Sandy thought they were going to do for the Model Y and have the rear facing, kind of like what you were mentioning, old couches in the bed and stuff.
Yeah.
They can face out the back of the truck. That's probably safer for whiplash too, anyway.
Well, I think that's just the beauty of like pickup trucks in general. If you don't have a crazy amount of stuff underneath the bed, you can do whatever, you can mount whatever you want to it easily because usually those beds are built to be strong and tough and you can mount stuff on
Mm-hmm.
them. So it only makes sense if you want to have like this weird piecewise SUV, but you got people facing backward like in the Model S. Like you just put an old couch in the back, screw it into the walls and the floor, and there you go. There's your
They've got
Tailosive
power there.
PUV. Yeah, they have power.
They can plug in their TV and everything.
Just get conked to the back of the head, and someone accidentally hits the toggle button.
Yeah,
Oh,
if there's
dear
no
goodness.
mid-gate, you're not going to have HVAC or not be able to talk to anyone in the rest of the vehicle. But
Right.
there will be a way. I don't know how and I don't know when, but there will be a way to legally move 7 people around in a Cybertruck. That's my prediction. Through OEM or not,
I would love to see that.
that'll be cool. Well, do you have any final thoughts as we wrap up?
The
Guess we didn't talk much
Tailosive
about the
PUV
Highland League.
is coming in 2030s, like everything else.
Yeah, like everything. Everything comes out in.
Don't remind me how close the 2030s are, but um, yeah, I think that's my only. Do I have anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, one last thing was it quick little story. So basically, I went out
Okay.
to breakfast with some friends the other day, and we had the dogs with us. So I put on dog
Okay.
mode for like I think the first time that day, and a
Yeah.
long time. Put on dog mode, had like 2 or 3 dogs in there. Went to
Uh-huh.
go get breakfast, and then all of a sudden I get
Two
a
or three,
call.
he doesn't know.
This is 2 or 3, who knows?
We don't know how many dogs.
We don't know how many dogs we have anymore. We're at breakfast, and my wife gets a call. She doesn't recognize the number, and she just doesn't answer. And then shortly after, I get a call. And I'm like, strange, interesting. I usually answer whatever calls, even if it's a spam call. I just like to listen to whatever it is, just for fun. I answer. I'm like, hello, and it was a police officer. And
Ooh.
he's like, hey, are you the owner of a Model Y? And I'm like, yes. What's
Ooh.
up? And they're like,
That's scary.
someone called to let us know that you've got dogs in your car and it's really hot outside. Are you somewhere near to like handle the situation? I'm like, have you looked inside the vehicle at the screen? He's like, look inside at the screen. And which screen? I'm like, there's one big screen in the middle and there's some text there that should say, my owner's away or driver's away or whatever. Here's what the temperature is in the car. And it should say the temperature in the car. And that should be at a safe temperature of 60 to 70 degrees or whatever. And he looked inside, he's like, oh, it's like 68 degrees or something like that, or 72 degrees. Okay, well,
Uh-huh.
never mind then. Have a good day. I'm like, Okay,
That's awesome.
so
Wow.
have a good day then, officer. And I'm like,
There's your
awesome.
advertising in action
Oh,
right there.
it was so great. It made me laugh because someone in that neighborhood got worried that there's dogs in the car and didn't look at the big screen. And not even the
Right.
cop looked at the big screen until I told
Yeah.
them there's a big screen that tells you the temperature in the car. And yeah, the dogs might be barking at you like crazy because they're my dogs are a little bit
Mm-hmm.
defensive, but like even so,
Mm-hmm.
it tells you the temperature inside, and you probably know how hot it is outside compared to inside. Maybe if not, then well, take the screen as like here's what the temperature is in the vehicle, and
Right.
call it that. And that's why I thought it was amazing. And also, I got a recording of it. Maybe I'll put it in here. I'll have Drew stitch it in. But it was just
Okay.
hilarious having this cop come up, give me a call, and me just not even have to lift a finger in regards to like having to walk all the way over to make sure everything's fine. I could easily look on the app and see everything is okay. The dogs are fine. No one's broken into the car or anything like that.
Did you see the camera feed and everything?
There is a whole camera feed. I've got it recorded. I think it's on this
Okay,
computer.
good.
If not, I'll find it somewhere. But it was great. I love this is what I love about Teslas. Like they think about these situations where people bring their dogs places and all that, but maybe they
Yeah.
can't bring them into a business for some reason because maybe that business isn't
Mm.
friendly with pets and all that. So
Right.
they bake in this feature that is great because you can leave the car running because it's an electric car, and it's able to cool the interior and keep your pet in a
Mm-hmm.
nice temperate climate, or not temperate, but at least acceptable climate for livable uh,
Yeah.
organisms,
Right.
and not have
Right.
an issue with it. It was great. It was the first
That's
time that
awesome.
I had to use dog mode and have someone get upset about it, but not have an issue with it at the end because,
Yeah.
well, there was no
It was
issue in the first place.
educational for everyone.
It was
I guess
awesome.
Teslas can do that.
I loved it. I loved the experience, even though it was kind of scary getting a call from a police officer saying, "Do you own a Model Y?" I'm like, "What the heck happened to the car?" Because it was parked it was parked down the street and all that, so it wasn't too far. It wasn't too far away from the dogs in case of emergency. But at the
Mm,
same time, it was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Just someone who can't read. Awesome.
that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's a great story.
Yeah, buy a
Both of
Tesla
those.
if you want a pet-friendly car, or a Rivian, I guess, because they also have the uh, dog mode as well, which
Yeah.
more
Mike's
cars should do
referral
that.
code right there.
Well, thank you for the plug of
Alrighty.
my referral code.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.